We're going to wait for Ms. Hall to get up on the dais so she can take roll and catch her breath. Okay, go ahead and roll. Yes.
Mr. Frank.
Here.
Mr. Bettis.
Here.
Mr. Castro.
Here.
I'm here and you're here, we're all here.
Thank you very much. And now we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry. No, you're okay.
What happened to the pause between one nation?
And now we have the pleasure of...
Madam President, thank you very much, members of the board. Please welcome the 8th grade students, Katie Heitman and Aaron Galindo of Picacho Middle School piano program. Katie will be performing a classical piece, Sonata in C by Mozart, and Aaron will be performing a contemporary
Nothing but accidents up here.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, girls. That was soothing, and we need soothing today, so I appreciate it. And we're going to go on now to the approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the March 17th, 2015 regular board meeting minutes.
So moved.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that motion passes. We need to approve the agenda, and I hope you've had some time to look over it. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as stands.
So moved.
Second.
And and let's vote. Okay, he already seconded, yes, So that's just, do we approve, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and finally, the approval of the consent agenda items. I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items. 5A1, approval of vendor payments. 5A2, approval of budget adjustments. 5A3, approval of property dispositions. 5B1, approval of student out-of-state travel. And 5C1, approval of contract between LCPS and FYI for 2015 summer meals. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, and we need a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that passes the consent agenda. And now we move on to recognition.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight we'd like to first recognize several of our winter sports champions. First tonight is Oñate Knights Cheers, so if you could come forward to the front, we would appreciate it. The Oñate Knights varsity cheer team competed at 4 competitions before heading to the state championship. They placed first at all 4 and even won a grand champion award at one of them. Now, the Knights went on to state and suffered an injury to their team that meant they had to change both routines in just 2 days. After competing the first routine, the Knights were in 3rd place, but they were only behind by 0.86 of a point from first place. They hit a solid second routine and ended up winning the state championship. This is the first 5A, 6A co-ed championship team in the history of the state. Let's congratulate the Oñate High. Coach, we probably need you up here.
And Mr. Day?
Mr. Day, would you like to join your team up here?
And in the very back, I can't see you. You want to come around to the side? There you go.
Madam President?
And Madam President is... Oh, okay.
Madam President, that would be a good picture with you in front, ma'am.
They won't get her if she stands back here. You're gonna stand up on her.
Pardon?
They won't see her again if she stands on.
What, see her? No. What?
That's okay.
stand up straight. Okay, ready? Okay. Let's be straight. Thank you.
All right, congratulations.
Good job, guys.
I thought they were familiar the Madam President and Ms. Galvan might do backflips down the aisle to lead them out, but we didn't do that. Okay, second now, we'd like to recognize our championships in basketball and bring forward the Centennial Hawks boys team. Come on up. Now, the Centennial Hawks boys basketball team won their first ever state championship in only the third year of the school's existence. The Hawks were 28-4 overall and undefeated 12-0 in district. They won the Hub City Classic Tournament in Berlin over Del Norte by a score of 70-46. They also won the Hobbs Holiday Tournament by defeating the mighty Hobbs Eagles 63-62, and Hobbs would later go on to win the Class 6A state championship. The Hawks proceeded to win the regular season and tournament district championships with an undefeated record. Their average margin of victory in the district was a whopping 33 points per game. The Hawks survived a scare at home in the first round of the state tournament, though, versus the Santa Fe Capital team, winning by 3 points. You guys gave us a heart attack. And advancing to play in Albuquerque at the Pit for the quarterfinal round. At the Pit, the Hawks would beat Bernalillo 64-46, Espanola Valley 80-53. In the state championship game versus Gallup, they won 52-38. Now, these young men have been the definition of hard work, perseverance, and selflessness throughout all of the 2014-15 season. It is a group that will forever be remembered as Centennial High School as the first ever boys basketball state champions. Let's give them a round of applause. Now we're going to squeeze you in uncomfortably tight, coaches, because they like to do that. And Madam President should be down there. Now we want that championship smile. That's right. All righty. Let's give another round of applause. Good job, gentlemen. Good job, Jim. Coach, good job. And you see, what we see as far as these teams also are produced by great coaching. And we are lucky this year to have the Southwest Regional Coach of the Year. Coach George Maya. Coach, come on down, of Mayfield High School. Yeah, give him a round of applause. Now, he was recognized as the recipient of the 2014 Sectional Coach of the Year for girls basketball for the Southwest by the National Federation of State High School Associations. Congratulations on such a prestigious award. However, Coach Maya is also then a finalist, only one of 8 in the country, for the National Coach of the Year in girls basketball by the National High School Athletic Coaches Association. The winner will be announced on June 20th, 2015, and at the National High School Athletic Coaches Association National Convention in Rochester, New York. And I'm sure all of us are going to support Coach Maya and hope that he is the National Coach of the Year. He deserves it. Coach Maya.
Yeah,
What's the coach's name?
I didn't catch it. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
We see we don't just excel in sports, we do a lot of other things in this district. And now it's my pleasure to present competed with other top mathematics students from across the country in the subject areas of algebra, geometry, and I wonder how many of you know this one, combinatorics. Have you ever heard that? I hadn't, and I'm a math teacher. These students used only pencil and paper for 3 individual and 2 team competitions. Each individual test lasted 50 minutes, and the team competitions lasted for 60 and 90 minutes. We had the highest placements ever in 3 years of attending this competition. As a bonus for all of their studying and hard work, the students had the opportunity to see the campuses of Harvard, MIT, and Boston University. Yeah, pretty cool. They also had the opportunity to meet with current students from all 3 institutions. And I'd like these students to come up, and I'm going to struggle with some of the names, and I'm going to apologize now. But Vlad Sevastianov, come on forward. Now, Vlad is the driving force behind HMMT for the first 3 years. Vlad wants to open a pizza shop with an oven that reaches 1,500 degrees when he retires from his science careers. And he'll attend Harvard in the fall. Let's give him a round of applause.
Mr. Rounds,
Yes.
if I may. I was just informed, Vlad mentioned to me before the meeting, his mom and dad are here. He just returned from Singapore, where he has, the university there flew him out to visit Singapore. They want him as a student there.
Now, Salim, if I mispronounce your last name, I want to apologize. Salim Iqbal, is that correct? He didn't make it. Okay. Well, let me go through this anyway. Salim is fervently passionate about basketball. He's the team manager for the LCHS boys basketball team and has earned the respect of his coaches. Salim is a national merit finalist and has placed the highest ever for LCPS for any LCPS student at HMMT this year. He has been accepted to UCLA and NYU, among other universities, so he has quite a nice trajectory. Let's give him a round of applause. And Tiffany, is it Law? Is that how you pronounce it? They nicknamed her. How do you pronounce it? Leo. Okay. Would you come up, Tiffany? They call her Tiff the Tyrant, so that works out better. Come on up. For her meticulousness on group projects, now she'll be choosing to attend college with admissions to University of California, Berkeley, Rice, UPenn, and other schools. Let's give Tiff the Tyrant a round of applause. Now, Helen Kai, please come forward. One of the two juniors on the HMMT team, Helen decided in 5th grade that her backup career to being a doctor was to be a bounty hunter. So look out. She's one of 72 students worldwide accepted into the prestigious Summer Science Program for summer 2015. Quite a feat. Let's give her a round of applause. Now we have A.J. Phillips. A.J., come on up. A.J.'s the other junior of the HMMT team. He seems to be continuously training for triathlons by running from one of his many club meetings and officer positions to cross country, and then to the tennis court, and then wherever else it is that he goes. This summer he will be attending Boys State. A.J., let's give you a round of applause. Now we have Evan Fuchs. Evan, come on up. Awarded the most intent to learning to ice skate. Evan's not here. Boy, I'm going to talk about him anyway. For the trip, anyway. His peers were pleased that he didn't fall while learning to ice skate, as were the ice rink monitors. You see, we insure it, but not for that much. Evan is still making his choices for college attendance this fall, and I'm sure will do well. Let's introduce now Angela Kearns. Angela loves to dance traditional ballet and modern jazz, and she'll be attending New Mexico State University this fall. And finally, we have Elijah Estrada. Elijah provided the entertainment on the trip by singing his way through the cold. He did. Elijah is a member of the Mayfield High School 2014 State Championship tennis team and has earned all-state honors as well as qualified for several national vocal music competitions. Elijah is sorting out offers of attendance from a whole host of universities and colleges, including Catholic University of America, Texas Tech University, Texas Christian, Baylor, Northern Arizona University, and of course our own New Mexico State University. Let's give Elijah a round of applause. Now, students, let's gather you up, and Madam President, perhaps you could join them for a picture, and perhaps Dr. Sanchez.
And Christy Salgado, their mentor, who really pulls this all off. Would you please join us?
And Stephen, why don't you join him?
If I could also take a moment, I just want to thank the board. We've gone to this competition 3 times, and it's been an absolutely incredible experience. We've learned a lot, and I can say for myself, and I'm sure for the others in Skull, it's really helped us a lot develop as people. I mean, we've had a lot of really good memories, and really hope students in the future also have this opportunity, and this continues. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ladies, kind of staggered every other so we can see and really do everybody. And you can come down. Well, that makes Dr. Sanchez look tall.
That's one way to do it. Give another round of applause to these fine students. And we do great academic things, and that also gets noticed. We have something called the Daniels Scholarship Program. And the Daniels Scholarship is kind of nice because if you receive the scholarship, you can have all expenses paid to any university anywhere in the world. Not bad, huh? I call it the $100,000 scholarship. It's a very nice go. So we have this evening some individuals who are receiving the Daniels Scholarship. I'd like to introduce Avery Everling. Avery graduated early from Oñate High School. Is Everly here? Shucks. Okay, I'm going to go through. I want to recognize this anyway. From Oñate High School in December of 2014, she has since moved to Georgia and is unable to attend tonight's meeting. She's received, I thought she was going to be here, I'm sorry. She's received Patriotic Civilian Service Award multiple times at White Sands Missile Range and has been chosen as Youth Volunteer of the Quarter as well as nominated for Volunteer of the Year. She'll be attending Mercer University in Macon, Georgia this fall as part of their honors program. At Mercer, she will double major in clinical psychology and business with a minor in art, and Avery has a big plans for giving back to the community by fostering teenagers, volunteering regularly, and going overseas to make a difference in the world. Now, she's a leader in her new community as the Red Cross Youth Group Chair and member of the Disaster Action Team. She's very regretful she's unable to be present tonight and sends her apologies. Let's give her a round of applause. Joshua Pritchard. Come on up, Josh. Joshua is a graduating senior from Oñate High School and is currently ranked in the top 10% of his class. He's considering schools such as Concordia University at Moorhead, Minnesota, Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas, the University of Colorado in Boulder, Colorado. Joshua plans to study in areas such as history, education, and pre-law. He's been part of the fine arts program all throughout high school with large involvement in choir and theater, playing the lead role of Tony in Oñate's production of the West Side Story. Joshua has attended 4 youth seminars at the United Nations in New York City since his freshman year. He has helped to organize anti-bullying campaigns with other youth leaders, and he currently has a $60,000 Concordia College of Excellence scholarship in addition to the Daniels Scholarship. Let's give him a round of applause. I have two others.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I have, and Ure Chastain, are you here? Ure is a graduating senior from Oñate High School. At the age of 17, he left his poverty-stricken family and drove 7.5 hours to move to Las Cruces to pursue a higher quality of education. Uri has secured employment at McAllister's Deli and Walmart to support himself while getting his high school education. In the fall, he'll be attending New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology for computer science and engineering with a minor in physics. That's pretty hardcore, folks. That's amazing. Holy cow. In the fall of 2016, he intends to transfer to the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, to continue his education. Give a big round of applause. And finally, Nathaniel Fernando Treviso is a graduating senior at Oñate High School and is on the varsity football and track teams. Even with a busy athletic schedule and a multiple AP course load, Nathaniel has been able to maintain a cumulative 3.5 grade point average. Now, he's been a member of the National Honor Society since his sophomore year and has received multiple academic awards, with academics always being his priority. Now, Nathaniel would like to major in political science and journalism, so look out. He'll be at the paper or someplace soon. He attributes his academic success to his mom and grandparents, as well as his teachers at Oñate, who gave him the desire to learn. A big round of applause for Nathaniel. Very good. Another round of applause. You even excel in science, and this year we had a very wonderful opportunity to have Sofia Sanchez Mayas be a White House honoree for the science fair. And so, come up for me, please, while we talk about you, Sophia. Sophia, senior at Mayfield High School, learned that algae has the potential to yield 5,000 gallons of biodiesel annually per acre. And she computationally modeled algae growth in order to optimize that phase of the biofuel production process. Sophia began work as a National Science Foundation Young Scholar, investigating how to convert a particular extremophile algae from Yellowstone into biofuel, and had promising results. As she found her algae holds the potential to fuel an energy-positive wastewater treatment plant, and also demonstrated a lower cost conversion of the algae to fuel compared to traditional methods. So her work earned her a place at the Supercomputing Expo in Los Alamos. On March 23, 2015, President Obama hosted the 5th ever White House Science Fair, welcoming more than 100 students from across the country to share their projects and celebrate their extraordinary science, technology, engineering, and mathematics achievements at the White House. Now, not only did President Obama invite Sophia to attend the fair, he honored her achievements, stating that Sophia has identified optimal algae to use in her method in helping to bring the world closer to using algae as a clean, renewable, and even inexhaustible energy source. That's quite an honor. So let's give Sophia a round of applause. Yeah, Ms. Hawk, why don't you come up, please? Yes, come up so we can have a picture. Let's do, please. Dr. Sanchez, perhaps you could join them also. Wonderful. Another round of applause. We're doing a good job. I'm so proud of every one of them.
Phenomenal.
Okay, that moves us on, and congratulations to everyone, to the parents, to the families that create this excellence, and the teachers as well.
Right.
We're going to move on to public input, and as everyone knows, we do not respond or take action to any statements, but know that we are listening. So we'll start with Mr. de Blasi.
Is my PowerPoint?
And Ms. Galvan?
They have it in the back.
Okay, so then, shall we cue them?
They're bringing it up right now.
Okay, thank you. I'm not a techie, so
Okay,
there
Bill
we go.
back there is.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Mr. Rounds, and distinguished visitors and guests. My name is Roland de Blasi. I am a teacher at Las Cruces High School. I teach history and government and economics. And I wish to present my position on the subject of daily planning. We have been without daily planning for, at least 4 years now. And it's something that I feel very strongly about. So I took I took some time this weekend, to put together a short PowerPoint. So if you would hit the next one, please. I have about 6 broad reasons why I feel that daily planning is important. First of all, I believe that if we have inviolable daily planning, that would facilitate the research and implementation of creative new strategies. If we don't have daily planning, then that means we have to do a lot of our planning at home, which a lot of us are willing to do, but I think if we had that daily planning, that certainly would help matters. Reason number 2 is that this would help us to get our assignments graded and posted in a more timely fashion. I know that, again, we do a lot of grading at home, and a lot of us are down with that, so to speak. But I think these 2 cartoons kind of make a good point. Number 3, please. Some people will say, but you signed up for teaching, right? Planning and grading at home is just part of the territory. Next, please. True, we're more than willing to perform these duties at home. However, there's only 24 hours a day. And also, many times weekends are dominated by planning and grading. Next, please. Reason number 3 is that students will have the opportunity to make up work. Vlad was absent from class today, as he has been for about a week or so. So needless to say, despite the fact that he spoke to me before going, he's going to have some makeup work to do. So if I can provide flexible times for him to come in, and other students as well, rather than coming in during the when other classes are occurring. Next, please. Okay, one of the things that's been kind of in the papers and whatnot is the whole topic of teacher attendance. And I know certainly from personal experience and from hearing from some of my colleagues, on occasion we've had to take time off in order just to get caught up on grading. And that certainly is detrimental to the education process. We'd also have the opportunity with daily planning to share with one another. But it has to be something that the teachers choose to do rather than it's mandated, because then it becomes kind of counterproductive. And I've used the word inviolable, and you're probably like, why? Well,
go ahead, just finish.
In the fall of 2014, some of our planning time was used for professional development, but fortunately our building admin realized that this was detrimental, so the 6th reason is at high school in particular, there's very high levels of content that have to be covered. And this is certainly not to denigrate my colleagues in middle school and elementary school. Next, please. Please consider the following. This is from the 5th grade Common Core Standard. These are the items that we'll be covering in 5th grade. Next, please. 8th grade, you see it gets a little bit harder. Next, please. And here you see, I believe that's the quadratic formula. Is that correct? Quadratic formula. And next, please. I have no idea what this is saying. I know my missus was enough of a gem to put this together. I didn't know there was such a thing as negative infinity, but I can tell you over the weekends she's spending a lot of time prepping, as are many of my colleagues. Last one, I believe, please. In conclusion, I would like to make a heartfelt plea to Madam President, to the ladies and gentlemen of the board, and to Mr. Rounds. Please restore our individual daily planning period. Thank you very much.
Would Keith Wooklich come up, please? I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
That was fine. Hi, Keith Wooklich, Las Cruces High School. I've seen most of you at the district advisory meetings throughout the year. 4 years ago, I believe it was 4 years ago, we lost our planning periods due to a budget situation. Mr. Rounds assured all of us that was going to be temporary, and as soon as we started getting more funding from Santa Fe, that would end. As you know, funding goes up, funding goes down. However, what we've noticed is the amount of teachers going down every single year, and we've seen non-teaching staff, we've seen non-teaching administrators going up every year. If you look around you do not see as packed an audience as I think you'd expect. There are two major reasons why you do not see every teacher in the district here. One of them being those teacher cuts that we've been talking about every single year, and we're looking at yet more teacher cuts this year. A lot of people are afraid of their jobs. Secondly, teachers feel as if their opinions are dismissed. There are only so much time in the day as you've been putting in. We've been burning the candles at both ends, and it's not us. We're not up here complaining we need more time for us. We need more time for our students. We need more time for them. Thank you.
Naomi Valdez. Is she? There she is.
Hello, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Rounds. Today I'm here to speak on the issue of the PED silencing of our teachers. As most of you know, there has been a consolidated effort amongst administration to restrict the flow of information from teachers to their peers and to parents. When I first learned about the contract that teachers were being forced to sign, saying they were not to disparage the PARCC test, I thought it had to be some sort of misunderstanding. After all, who else am I to rely on for accurate information about my child's education if not her teacher? There seems to be a slew of policy over the last few years that is clearly not in the best interest of my child or our teachers. As parents, our access to information is somewhat limited. We're not privy to the information, the educational policy that happens behind closed doors, and we aren't updated regularly. Excuse me. When it comes to, we're left to sort of shuffle through the information that the media provides or government websites that are sometimes outdated or overwhelming and unclear. When it comes to the PARCC test, something that's been highly controversial, I want the truth, and I think that we need the truth. Who better to give us that information than teachers? They're the ones teaching for and facilitating the test. Why aren't we listening to the facts? I just don't understand it. Furthermore, we need first-hand accounts, and only teachers can provide that. Who better to give that information? Once more, not only is silencing our teachers not sensible, it's very suspicious. Why does the PED have an interest in silencing our teachers? As a parent, I honestly want these questions answered. I spoke to a first-year teacher last week, I'm sorry. She sought me out to thank me for some of the work that I've been doing fighting for teachers. And she also wanted me to know that it had been made explicitly clear to her that if she spoke negatively of this test to her colleagues, to parents, to students, that it was going to cost her her job. She is a mother of 3. She has a child that's going to require lifelong care due to a severe disease. And she's in no position to risk her livelihood. I spoke to another veteran teacher, a special education teacher, who expressed sadness because a lot of her students were having daily meltdowns because they were being expected to take a test at a grade level that they don't comprehend or read at. She lost her son to PTSD last year. Her words to me were, "I just want to make it to retirement so that I can mourn my son." She's in no position to risk her livelihood either. Today I asked the school board, I asked Mr. Rounds to please stand with our teachers. I ask that not only do we let the teachers talk, that we encourage them to talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Ty Hart.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Rounds. I first would like to thank you for contesting the teacher attendance and evaluation guideline policy. I feel you have set a precedent. I feel that Las Cruces set a precedent and other districts will soon follow. My name is Ty Gutierrez Hart. I'm a mother of a 3rd grader, and I come to you today with my concerns I have with the PARCC assessments and other testing that's been happening in our schools. Twice a year, we as parents go into our parent-teacher conferences, and we're shown computer screens, papers with numbers, bar graphs, scores, and other data from Test A and Test B. And most of us parents have no idea what these numbers mean and what these tests are used for. We never see the tests or the works that our children complete on them. I started to ask questions and was mortified to hear that the teachers were being evaluated partly on these test scores. I started to see experienced teachers retiring early, taking non-teaching positions, fighting for the kindergarten teaching job so they don't have to deal with these evaluation issues. How are our kids supposed to get a valuable education from teachers fresh out of college when they don't have mentors there at their schools? Last year one morning while driving my son to school, he started getting upset with tears in his eyes. He said he had to take the discovery test that day. He said he was afraid he was going to do bad and they were going to fire his teacher, Mrs. So-and-so. I told him that was silly and dismissed what he said, but I wish I would have listened a little bit more. When he got home from school that afternoon, he had a letter in his backpack that I was supposed to sign and return to his school. He was clearly upset and knew he was in trouble. After feeling the pressure, he and 4 other students in his class basically opted themselves out of the test and clicked as fast as they could to get it over with. The teacher was planning to use the letter she had the kids written to back up on her evaluation on why her scores in her classroom were so low. Kids as young as 7 years old are feeling responsible for their teachers' careers. That puts a lot of pressure and stress on a child. This year I opted my son out, test after test, and now we have the park, which is insanely confusing and difficult for these children, with results not even available until well after the school year has ended. Why are we doing this to our kids? I'm going to leave you with the words my son had to write that day. Dear Mom and Dad, I took the most important test of 2nd grade today. I made the choice to not do my best and to just click through the answers to get done quickly. That's the reason I didn't do as good as I should have. Every test can't be the most important test. We are supposed to be bringing our kids' esteem up, and with this system, we're just letting them down. Something has to give. We need you to advocate for us. Get the corporations out and get the public back into public education. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hart. We have one more, but it will come with, well, it just says planning period for regular ed high school teachers. And it's not an agenda item today. So I don't know, there is no name on this. Okay. What is your name, ma'am?
Your last name, Sherry?
Nolan.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. My name is Sherry Nolan, and I'm a special education teacher at Las Cruces High School. I've been in the district for 27 years. Most special ed teachers have an average of 25 to 40 students, which includes our advisory students, which change yearly with our caseload. I currently have a planning period every day, and I use every bit of my planning time. A few things I do during planning are create lesson plans, weekly lesson plans, write IEPs, grade papers, put grades in synergy, gather supplies for lessons, research innovative ideas for our current topic of study, and best teaching practices. Meet with students, parents, and call parents in the evenings and during school. Attend department and professional development meetings. Because there simply isn't enough time to do it all, I stay late after school, work home countless hours, and work many Saturdays in my classroom. Regular ed teachers have between 120 to 150 students to do the same thing that I do, with the exception of writing IEPs. However, many do and must attend IEP meetings. Their advisory class consists of approximately 20 to 25 students, and most of those students do not have in class. They also have those students for 4 years. As you may know, the role as a student for next year, meeting with parents, teaching career skills and pathways, monitoring grades and attendance, just to name a few. I can't imagine having the amount of students that they have and the added responsibilities that come with each student, and be expected to do it all with less planning time than I am afforded. They have been warriors in the past years, doing more with less time. I have absolutely no doubt that they pay the price in their own lives, missing many milestones and memories with their families, and all for the sake of their students. I urge you to please put back their planning periods to one per day, as it was in the past. I truly believe you will see a greater increase in teacher effectiveness, energy, happiness, feeling of success and worth, and more positive attitude in the time that is very critical in our profession. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for all statements made. Mr. Rounds?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. I'd first like to take a point of personal privilege. Clarence Fielder was a longtime educator, historian, and pillar of this community. He was an expert on African American history, especially in southern New Mexico, and on school segregation in Las Cruces. He was born in 1909 and attended the then segregated Booker T. Washington Elementary in Las Cruces. He earned his bachelor's and master's degrees from New Mexico State University. Mr. Fielder later taught at Booker T. Washington, Court Junior High, and Alameda Junior High. He was also a history professor at New Mexico State University. Mr. Fielder was also a member of this board, the Las Cruces Board of Education, from 1996 to 2001. Over the years, he was recognized for many contributions. He was the Las Cruces Public Schools Teacher of the Year, and in 1970, he was the New Mexico Teacher of the Year. He was named an outstanding alum for the NMSU College of Education, and he earned the 2000 Community Racial Harmony Award from New Mexico State University. I'm proud to say I knew him. Early in my career as public school finance chief, I had the opportunity to visit Las Cruces and meet with Mr. Fielder and other members of the board at the time. He was a kind and a compassionate man who had a tremendous impact on our educational community. He recently passed, and he will be missed. Now, Madam President, members of the board, this evening we have another unique presentation. I'm delighted to remind us all that Las Cruces Public Schools has secured one of only 40 Challenger Centers in the in the world. And we're in the process of renovating at our annex here, Professional Development Center, in that particular respect. This evening, I've asked Jason Clark to come forward. He's our architect on the project, because I thought the community and you members of the board would be appreciative of an opportunity to see where we are and what we're doing. And in the process, I want to commend Dr. Sanchez for his efforts at securing this facility, making it happen, stealing it from Los Ranchos de Albuquerque. Yeah, he does that. He drives around and picks stuff up and brings it up. And we will have it, the good news is we will have it in place in August of this year. And every sixth grade student in this district will pass through that center twice a year from that moment forward, as far as you can see. It is the root, the basis of our new sixth grade science program. And Dr. Wendy Miller Tomlinson, Dr. Sanchez, and others have been instrumental in all of that redesign. It is unique in this state, just like the kids we saw, the awards we received. I'm proud to tell you what a great job has happened and what a wonderful opportunity for our children this will be. So if I could, Jason, let me have you share some plans.
Madam President, fellow board members, Jason Clark of Studio D Architects. Superintendent Rounds, as usual, you take my first three slides and I can throw them away.
Go through them anyway. They sound better from you.
Well, I think that the neat thing about this is truly a collaborative science environment. I got to go visit one of these, and it truly is pretty amazing what these kids can do. If you can go to the next slide. Just to orient some of your board members who may not be familiar, the Professional Development Center, which is across the parking lot. We are going to be renovating about 3,900 square feet of the southwest corner of this space. It used to be the textbook warehouse. So what happened is when the district was able to get the components from the Albuquerque School District up there, we're trying to reuse all these components, reconfigure them, and put them into this space. So we're a little smaller than your typical Challenger Center. Your typical Challenger Center is a little over 5,000 square feet, so we're utilizing about 3,900 square feet. Go to the next slide. So with that being said, we're also going to be utilizing some of your existing space in the Professional Development Center. If you go to the next slide. So the MESIA room, we're going to utilize the MESIA room as the orientation room for the children. As they move into the space, this is where the kids will come. They'll get their last-minute assignments, talk about the mission that's going to happen. So this is a fantastic space. I don't know if you guys really realize what kind of amazing assets you have over there in the Professional Development Center. When we had the director of the Challenger Center and his colleague come down here and look at this space, and we described what was going to happen in this orientation room, they were amazed at the technology and the ability of what it can be offered to the students inside this space. So in this slide here, we show you what has happened with the components. So what we're actually getting from the Challenger Center to begin with is a transporter, a space station, and a mission control center. So what we're doing is, the best way to describe this, it's almost like Epcot Center for Kids. We're going to be bringing these students into this environment and trying to immerse them into an environment that is themed for space, that is themed for science, and try to keep them in this environment through the entire mission. If you could go into the next slide. So that being said, as we bring the students into the south side of the building, we'll have a staging area, which is the lobby, where we're going to have displays from NASA, potentially Virgin Galactic, some other type of vendors that could bring some of their space-related items for the kids. The circulation space is key, as I just said, to keep these kids immersed in this environment. So here we have the lobby. We're going to be redoing the hallway in the back area of the PDC, the transporter. Once the kids come out of the transporter, they're in space, and so we have an area here that we're calling the airlock vestibule, where we'll be doing some lights and some decontamination and potentially some video that we look through windows that makes it look like they're in space. So all kinds of neat things for these kids to start to experience as they get on with their actual work. The next slide. So this is the mission control portion of the project. These are the components we're actually getting from the Challenger Center. So in this case, we have students that have come from orientation, come into mission control. Their fellow students have gone through the transporter and are now in the space station. And what's really interesting is to watch how these kids interact with each other via headsets and video. They actually control the experiments, control the mission from here, and actually direct the students on what to do and when to do it. Really fascinating to watch how they interact with each other. Next slide. The space station itself is really cool. We have all kinds of experiments that the kids will take part in. One of the things that was really interesting when I went through one in Kentucky, which you came through the transporter and they took you through this. Actually, it was like a dark room door going into a photo area, and when you're going in to develop your film. So you actually came out of that completely dark space into the space station. You really felt like you were someplace different. So it really does give the kids an interesting feel. And then the fact that you're actually watching your fellow student on a monitor and talking to them on a headset, really, really fascinating stuff. So this is the actual space station, very similar to what we'll be applying here into the PDC itself. Go to the next slide. So that's really kind of just a quick overview of where we are. Demolition has started in the space. The actual components arrive at the end of the month, end of May. So we're well on our way to getting done. One of the neat things about the fact that it's in the PDC is that technology is available. In the very foreseeable future, you can see Las Cruces Public School kids in mission control running an actual mission with the kids in Kentucky in their space station. So really, really fascinating project to be involved with, and something that's going to be really great for your sixth graders.
And Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, what's really neat is Dr. Sanchez and I have met with the National Challenger Center hierarchy, the executive director. And because Mr. Harris back there and his crew has so much robustness in our capacity, I'll call it behind the wall, to move video, audio, and things around and support this kind of effort. Imagine this. Congress in Washington, D.C. will be able to watch live feeds of our missions happening here because we will be the exemplar in this program internationally. And I'm so very proud of that because we've set the kinds of foundations, Jeff and others, that we knew would have this kind of payoff. What's really nice is we'll be articulating. I talked to the superintendent, Alamogordo, last week at a meeting, and they'll be the first district joining us that'll be actually another station away, and they'll have to worry about how they trick their station out. But the issue is we will be able to joint mission, just like we were saying we can do for, Jason was saying, we can do with Kentucky or any of the other centers. You see, this is not just a Las Cruces asset. This is a New Mexico asset. And so we're going to reach out to our folks. Dr. Sanchez, Dr. Thomason, and others have done an amazing job with the curriculum design. And we heard some concerns about park testing and some of those things. This really gives us a tremendous edge in moving the kind of learning forward. And let's not forget, just over the hill over here are a bunch of really important people. In fact, just on the front of the hill over here are a bunch of really important people that are in NASA programs and NASA-related programs, along with the spaceport. And part of how we'll leverage this is with our local spaceport tax money that will allow us to keep this running over time. Now, this is going to be $1 million asset by the time it's in August. And we got it for nothing. That's a good number. Now, we did have to work the building around and invest money in renovation, but I think that's a pretty good investment because our kids for years and years will be able to use this. So Dr. Sanchez, Mr. Harris, and certainly Jason, the work you've done, this is the real deal. So I'm so very proud of it. We just wanted you all to get a chance to take a peek in as we begin putting this together. And I'll invite the board, Dr. Sanchez, once we have it installed, to be one of our first mission groups to come in, because you see, it's not just kids. I visited the one in Colorado Springs while I was on another trip to see what they did, and they had a deal with Comcast for their satellite launch group so they could actually come in and work the simulation work before they went to live work at launching their Comcast satellites. So you see it has tremendous potential. It's very, very high tech. And we're better than that. So thank you so much. And members of the board, we'll have a good time on a half-a-day mission together once this is in place.
Thank you.
Madam President, I think that moves us to our human resources development presentations. And may I move on to B1, ma'am?
Yes.
So B1 is our Aspiring Administrators Academy overview, and Dr. Marufo will do that presentation here in just a second as soon as Bill gets us from one to the other. Bill? Oh, not that one.
Not that one.
Just a second here. We drive our poor tech crazy because we do so many different things, so we'll wait just a second. Up. We're under the HRD. There you go. Thank you. So, Dr. Marufo, let me turn to you.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Rounds, members of our audience. This evening, I'd like to provide you with an overview of the Aspiring Administrators Academy. The purpose of the Aspiring Administrators Academy was to begin to develop and build capacity of our teachers in this district to prepare them to be exceptional leaders in leading our schools. So this second Aspiring Administrators Academy was launched during the 2014-15 school year. 10 participants were nominated by their school administrators for participation in the program. Each of the monthly sessions were comprised of two components, theory and application. The theoretical component focused on 7 principles from the book Leverage Leadership by Paul Bambrick Santoyo. And each of the 7 levers answers the core questions of school leadership, and in specific, what should an effective leader do and how and when should they do it? The 7 levers focused on in the academy are on data-driven instruction, observation and feedback, leadership teams. The second component, which focused on application, was showcased by our exceptional leaders in this district who took time from their schedules to address the aspiring administrators. Each of the administrators provided the application side of the levers of each of the 7 levers. This evening, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to the board the 10 participants of the 2014-2015 Aspiring Administrators Academy. And I would ask, as I call your name, you please come up. I'll begin with Andres Armijo. Andres is a special ed teacher at Alameda Elementary. Rachel Polk. Rachel is a 4th grade teacher at Conley Elementary. Inocencia Campos is a coordinator in our bilingual program. Luis Mesa is an AES teacher. Ida Madrid is a 4th grade teacher at Hermosa Heights Elementary. Luis Lucero works with the BICS program at Conley Elementary. Michelle Ronga, instructional specialist, Las Cruces High School. Veronica Chavez, 3rd grade teacher, Jornada Elementary. Kathleen Gardner, English Language Arts, Las Cruces High School. Ladies and gentlemen, board members, these are the members of the 2014-2015 Aspiring Administrators Academy, and it's been an honor to work with all 10 of them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Very good. Let's give them a round of applause. See, Madam President, members of the board, one of the things that I worry about, because I'm going to be an old guy, is what are we doing as far as our succession planning? And so these fine ladies and gentlemen are part of that plan. And as you can see, they're marvelous individuals. They carry good credentiality as teachers and others, but they're taking that step toward the administrative pathways where we need that educational leadership that can sustain itself over time. And so I want to congratulate them on their hard work, their tireless effort at really trying to get this inside not only their head, but their practice. And I'm so very proud of them, Madam President, members of the board. We look forward to great things in the future, and as Liz said, we're very, very proud of you. We're honored to work with each of you. Thank you. Madam President, under B2, you have the Certified Classified Employee Report, and Dr. Marufo is here to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions from board members? No? I think we're okay. Thank you, Dr. Marufo, for the work that you do.
Madam President, I think that moves us to item 5A, Finance, and my Associate Superintendent Terry Dean is going to join us here because he has, I believe, a slideshow to show you. Is that correct, Terry?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and Madam President, members of the board, this is the board financial report first, and then is in your packets for your review. and this is a presentation on your 2016 budget overview. If there are questions on the financial package, we'll be happy to answer those first.
Does anyone have questions on the financial packet that was in our pile of things? Okay, so then we're ready to move on.
Are we not doing B2?
Yes, that's what we're going to do.
Oh.
I think that's when he's ready to do, right?
Madam President, we're on 5A5.
What happened to B2?
I'm sorry? Oh, well, yes, we just mentioned it, and did you have a question?
No question.
Okay, no.
I'm sorry, Madam President. So I apologize.
No.
I kind of raced through it. So presented in your packet was a certified and classified employee report, and generally, are there questions we would be happy to answer? And I'm sorry, I rushed through that.
Okay, so.
So now we're at 5A5, Madam President,
Yes,
is that correct?
we're ready.
And Mr. Dean?
We're ready to be inspired, okay?
Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Rounds, tonight, I have to tell you, I am somewhat nervous in making this presentation. I'm going to be very frank. I'm going to be very direct. Tonight's report is not a favorable report. In fact, the district's financial condition or financial position is dire. It is not my intent to be overly dramatic, even though I raised a drama teacher, nor sound like Chicken Little or Eeyore. My intent is to inform the Board of Education and the community where the district can make intelligent, informed, and responsible decisions. This information was reviewed with the Finance Committee earlier today. In my professional opinion, if we do not make course correction, the district could easily become bankrupt by the end of next fiscal year. This is a bold statement, and I apologize for being somewhat of an alarmist. However, we need to listen to the facts regarding the district's financial position. The direction that we have taken, we have built a house that we can no longer afford. The report is not designed to cast blame, but to bring awareness and course correction. One of the things I would like to point out before we start flipping through the slides is we have utilized and leveraged every fund that is available to us in any legal, ethical way. For example, we have also stretched our SB 9 dollars as far as they can be stretched. We have absorbed as much of the operational cost as we've legally been able to do in the SB 9 budget, and we have now exhausted our buckets. And I've got a clicker here somewhere.
There you go.
Okay. This is information that was shared to you in a slightly different format within your board packet, but we broke it off into smaller bite-sized pieces. We began the fiscal year with approximately $8.3 million of cash. That was a $5 million reduction from the previous year. The state equalization for this year is approximately $177 million and approximately $3 million in other revenue, which includes indirect costs and taxes. Our total resources available in the operational fund is $188 million. Now, our current expenditures that we estimate that we are going to spend for the entire fiscal year is approximately $185 million. Now, in January, we reduced the budgets to all departments and all schools. All the remaining unexpended budget was reduced by 6%. We've been very aggressive by not filling positions that were not necessarily instructional positions. We have been very aggressive in not filling those to generate as much cost savings as could be generated. We are looking at our ending cash balance as of the end of this fiscal year of $3.2 million. The graph to the right also indicates the percentage of the budget or the percentage of the total resources that come to us through either the state equalization guarantee or in cash balance. You can see for the current year that approximately 4% of our total resources is available to us through the cash balance, the carryover cash from one year to the next. 94% of the total resources is in state equalization guarantee or recurring funds. As we look at the total operational resources, we take the current year and we add what we project for next year. If we hold a level budget or a level expenditure level, we do have $3.2 million worth of cash that's going to roll over to the next year. We have state equalization that is increased by $3 million going into next year. State equalization, that's the good news. The unit value has increased for next year, and we will talk about this in a few slides later. The unit value has increased by $20. Now that $20, everything together translates to approximately $3 million additional dollars in state equalization guarantee. However, that is not necessarily the problem. The problem is our cash balance has declined by $5 million. So if you net everything together that we are expecting as far as revenue for next year in the operational fund, we are still operating with $2.5 million less available resource as what we have in the current year. At our current trajectory, based upon what we know on revenue, based upon the expenses, if we hold the expenditures level, we will end the fiscal year next year with approximately $750,000 cash.
Now, Mr. Dean, that chart, if I understand it, the brown line is the projected targeted cash balance.
That is correct.
And the tan line is the meandering cash balance we've had since FY04. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct.
Thank you.
And Mr. Rounds, let me point something out. You will notice in FY13, or in the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2013, that our cash balance was higher. The reason that it was higher is the district changed our practice because previously we would pay for the risk insurance at the tail end of the fiscal year. We moved that to the front of the fiscal year for which the premiums apply. So we have a timing difference. So the peak that you see on FY13, and I want to point this out for full disclosure, is an artificial peak because that 1 year we did not have approximately $5.5 million worth of expenditure.
So, Mr. Dean, I believe that was a change of 1 day in payment. Rather than paying on June the 30th, we paid on July the 1st?
That is correct. We paid in July.
Mr. Dean, are you going to talk about the first day payment required for liability insurance later in your presentation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We'll leave it for that.
Madam President, members of the board, if we were to take 1 month's expenditure is approximately 8.3%. If we were to take that and apply that to the total revenue, that would give us a target level. We are actually trying to target 6% of total resources, but if we were to move that to 8.3%, then that is $15.6 million. So we're being very conservative, or our target is lower than what I believe it should be. I believe it's 6% should be the absolute minimum as to what the cash balance should be, or the target. As we compare the resources, the total available resources from 1 year to the next, in FY14-15, which is the current fiscal year, to next fiscal year, you can see that our cash balance as a percentage of our total resources has gone from being 4% to 2% of the total available resources that for us to run the district. I previously mentioned that the unit value had increased. So the slide that you're seeing is the calculation, and it is very small on the screen. I'm glad I've got a copy of it and not relying on my glasses. But as we calculate the state equalization guarantee, I wanted to point out that the SEG is actually an average. Next year's money is based upon the average enrollment from the 80 and the 120th day of the current year. So if we compare the average of the 80 and the 120th day from the current year to that of the previous year, we have increased 19.25 students.
Mr. Dean, that's out of about 25,000?
Yes, sir, that is correct. That is at approximately 25,000 students. So you can see that our enrollment is flat. Now, if all of those students, those 19 students, were in one school and one classroom, then that would mean an additional teacher, an additional staff. However, the probability of that occurring when we have 40 schools in 12 different grades, 13 counting kindergarten, is that distribution is probably not going to be large enough at any one school to impact the staffing. But we are flat on our enrollment. In continuing in looking at the state equalization guarantee, all students there's a weighting. It can't be simple. It can't be a simple math problem. But we take our enrollment and we run it through a weighting factor, and that weighting factor then results in what is called 44,000 program units after you do this weighting. So this screen is there to where you can see the weighting that we have for the students. For example, kindergartners are 1.44 is the weighting factor. So every kindergartner gives us 1.44 program units. A high school student gives us 1.25. A sixth grade student gives us 1.045 program units per student. You sum all of those, and then you come up with the program units. In continuing on the calculation, and I'm sorry, Mr. Davis went to sleep during the Finance Committee during this portion of the presentation.
Several times, Mr. Davis.
And I reminded Mr. Davis that we were making the presentation for the young members on the board.
Oh,
Mr. Castro liked that comment. But anyway, as we calculate the program units, the next slide, this is a summary of the program units, and where we sum all of those up. We did have a couple, and I'm not going to explain the whole thing, we did have a couple of windfalls, we did have a couple of bright spots during the calculation of the state equalization guarantee. Number one, our T&E index increased by 0.007. Now, that is a very small increase, you may think, but that very small increase actually translates to $1.1 million.
And so T&E, for everybody, because we're acronym rich in education,
yes, I'm sorry,
is training and experience. So what we do is we map every teacher in the district on a report that we give Santa Fe. And if you're a brand new teacher, you're at step 0, and you're in what's called a BA level. You received your bachelor's degree, and you're at that step. And the highest you can get is a master's plus 45 hours or a doctorate degree, EDD or PhD, with 16 or more years experience. And if you're at the low end, you're worth 0.75, and if you're at the high end, you're worth 1.5 units. So when you compile all that razzmatazz together, it pushes out this average training and experience index. The power is that in formula, it is multiplied times a significant number of the units within the formula. So it's a very powerful motion. A 0.7% increase had over $1 million effect on our revenue income for the district. That meant that we actually held more longer standing teachers than we gained lesser standing teachers. That's good news. Our T&E has dropped over the last couple of years and now has rebounded back through some planning we've done as we've worked with folks who have gone back to school and or in our hiring practices. So that's a real short course on T&E. If you want more information, call Terry. Or call me. We're good at. So I'm sorry. I just wanted training experience is important. The other, Mr. Dean, is the at-risk index. Go ahead.
The other windfall that we had is the at-risk index. Every 4 years, they recompute the at-risk. They, being the public education department, recomputes the at-risk index. It is a very large statistical model that I do not understand, but there are three elements that make up the at-risk index. It is the mobility of the district, the ELL population, as well as the free and reduced lunch. Now, one question that Mr. Castro asked me earlier today, and he goes, at risk of what? At risk of failing and at risk of dropping out. That's what constitutes the at-risk factor.
And I'll go back in history, just a real quick history course. All the way back in 1988, there was a factor brought in that was for the Albuquerque Public Schools. We have a sparsity factor, and they put in a factor for large schools. There was a lot of problem with that because it windfalled Albuquerque more than people thought was legitimate. So a bunch of us got together and looked at why would you need extra units, and what it really was students who struggle in our districts because they're poor, because they're mobile, or because they have languages other than English, we felt should receive more funding so we can provide specialized programs for them. That's the root of this index that came online, I believe, in 1991 or 92, and has been in effect ever since. So here are the three factors that Terry just talked about. In this district where we were helped, and it's a rather complex, Dr. Sanchez, you and I have tried to fix it over the years as we worked with the legislature, fairly complicated formula, but we saw the economic increase in free and reduced lunches slightly, but where we really saw it was in the increase in our ELL service population that we can report. Now, that's no surprise to any of us, but the good news is we have a windfall in our finances that assist this particular momentum we have. So that's a quick, short course on that.
Mr. Dean, how much is that windfall?
The windfall for that is approximately $1 million.
Okay.
So between the two, you saw the condition we're in? That's after we take a little over $2.2 million of new revenue out of these two factors added into our scenario. Yes. So thank goodness for that.
Overall, the state equalization, now please realize that the SEG or the state equalization guarantee is not finalized. But at this time, we believe it to be approximately $181 million. I'm sorry, $180 million for next fiscal year.
So we will be going to budget at the $180 million mark rather than the previous 177 and change $1 million mark. We see $3 million more revenue, but at the same time we lost over $3 million of cash. I'm sorry, over $5 million of cash. So we're still upside down by $2 million, apples to apples on that. That's our starting position Mr. Dean is talking about. Go ahead, Mr. Dean.
As a scenario one, first glance at the budget, we've been asked to look at what would the budget be if we maintained the current level of staffing. We have total resources of $185.7 million. If we staff at the current level, our total staffing cost is $168 million. We have some other items that we know are going to be increases over the current budget now. We have tier movements. The tier movements are those teachers that either by the new rule that has been issued by Public Education Department that if a teacher meets certain qualifications that they can automatically move to the next tier without the submission of dossier. We believe that that is going to increase. There's actually 52 teachers that fall into that category. We believe 64, so it's increased. But wait, if you buy now, you can lock in this
By
price.
midnight, we'll give you one,
But
one extra.
currently, it's 64. Now, we know that the cost, and Andrea says I use this number all the time, we know the cost of the normal tier movement is approximately $1.2 million. But some of those are going to be in both areas. They won't submit their dossier because they meet these other qualifications. We believe the cost is going to be greater, but at this time, we do not have a good pulse on that number. So we're going with the number that we usually see with the regular tier movement, which is $1.3 million.
So let me give you another history lesson real quickly. When the three-tiered system was brought into statute, what early legislatures did is they funded this tier movement. They recognized the cost and folded it into the overall state equalization guarantee. Unfortunately, Dr. Sanchez, I think it was after about 5 years, they stopped that practice. So really this is a sort of an unfunded mandate from my chair, because you have the requirement to pay, and it's right, we're excited for people to move, but you have no revenue stream to pay for that $1.3 million hit that we're projecting. And so that creates a bit of a dilemma for us in the district, and certainly stresses us financially. It's an unfunded amount of money. It's not in the formula. I looked at the work papers, Dr. Sanchez, from the staff in Santa Fe when they did it. In none of the work papers did they look at tier movement as part of their calculation. Mr. Dean.
Another of the known increases that we're going to have is $550,000 as far as the increase in medical costs. That's going to be going up 4%. Now, that could actually come in slightly less, but they have told us to budget 4%, and that is the New Mexico Public Schools Insurance Authority who actually gives us those rates.
And let me ask Mary Parr Sanchez. Mary Parr, Mary, you are on the NMSIA board, and are you the president now? I'm delighted. Congratulations and condolences simultaneously to you. But what we understand, and I just wanted to check our facts, is that there's a projected 4% increase, and it'll be shared by the employer and employee still as it has in the past. Am I correct? And so we expect to see, if you're an employee of the district, you can expect to see about a 4% increase on your share within your take-home pay, or when paid still. And I know that I want to congratulate Mary and the NMSIA board. The early numbers I looked at looked like about a 10% increase, and the board, by using their reserves that they have and some really hard work, was able to reduce that hit by about 6% through some tremendous work done by them. I just want to recognize, Mary, the work that you and the board have done in a tough situation. So thank you so much. Yeah.
An unfortunate item that we learned last week at the spring budget workshop is our risk insurance has increased by 15%. We're double checking some numbers at this time to make sure that that rate is indeed correct. At this time, that is an approximately an $810,000 increase in risk insurance.
And that check has to be written on the 1st of July. And you're going to talk about the amount in a minute, so I won't steal your thunder. But that was a shock to us. We thought our rates on risk would be relatively level. One of our scenarios we run was a 1.5% increase is all. So this was quite a shock to the system to see that kind of thing.
I just want to say, if we could just let Mr. Dean finish, because I'm kind of like going back and forth here, so maybe we can let him run through real quick. I'm interested in scenario 2 and 3. And
well, at this time, Madam President, we do not have any scenarios. We are computing things now.
Okay.
But at this time, we do not have anything other than this data. We just returned from spring budget workshop Friday evening, so we do not have a lot of that data. We do anticipate, we normally budget, and this is no secret, we budget for utilities based upon our current year's projections, and we'll be fairly close, Plus, next year we add about a 10% just in case we have a wintertime freeze. Water is the most alarming increase that we have. It is going up about 15% per year. Transportation. House Bill 2 cut transportation funding by $4 million. That is going to result in greater costs to the districts. Current year, we're going to spend $235,000 about dollars for excess cost in transportation. Because of the reduction in the transportation funding, we believe that this amount is going to go to close to $600,000 for next year, or that's going to be the increase. If we maintain all other spending levels at their current level, we will actually end the fiscal year in a cash deficit position of $6.5 million. And that is an illegal budget. We cannot submit a budget that is showing a deficit position. This is information that we talked about previously, but I just want to kind of point some things out. That the 1/12 of our annual expenditures is 8.3% of our total annual expenditures, which would be $15.6 million. And currently what we're projecting is a $7.5 million difference between the targeted at 6% cash and where we will end the fiscal year at $3.2 million. We have already been placed on notice by Moody's that our bond rating, if we do not get our cash reserves up, that our bond rating is going to tank. If we look at the next level, and I'm sorry, that it's going to decline, that our bond rating is going to decline. If our bond rating drops out of the investment grade, and currently we are rated as a AA3, if our bond rating drops out of that AA category, we can count on an increase of the interest rates of 0.75%. Recently, we have sold bonds of $15 million. If those bonds were sold and the interest rates were 0.75% higher, then it would cost the taxpayers of Doña Ana County $1 million more in just interest to retire those bonds. We have $50 million of bonds that are still unsold. We're committed to sell those because we have a great big new high school going on down here that we cannot stop construction on. And we need those bonds to finish that high school as well as other projects. As we look at what our cash needs are coming for July, we know that we have receivables from the Public Education Department. Receivables from the Public Education Department is we have to spend the money that for federal funds. We have to spend the money first, and then we request the reimbursement for those monies. And we know that as of June 30th of last year, that balance that we were due to from PED was approximately $7.7 million. We have risk insurance that we have to pay in July, and that is $6.1 million. We have 2 payrolls in July. Between the two, we are looking at $2.3 million. Accounts payable, just the regular electric bill, water bill, gas bill, etc., approximately $820,000. These are just July's payments for a total of approximately $17 million. We have $3.2 million to do that. Yes, we will be receiving our state equalization guarantee money in the month of July. That's going to be approximately $15 million. But here is one of the, if everything clicks the way it's supposed to, we may be okay. But if there's a glitch, about 5 years ago, the public education department blamed the Department of Finance and Administration. I don't care who was at fault. But we did not receive our July SEG payment until July the 25th. If that happens, we don't make payroll. Aren't I just a ball of good news? We do have to fund payroll on July the 13th because of the first payroll of the year is July 15th. We have to fund it. That means we have to have the cash in the bank on July 13th to make that payroll. Madam President, that concludes my little joyful presentation. And, like Eeyore says, thanks for listening. I stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dean, for that illuminating presentation. Do we have any questions currently from the board? Maury?
Yes.
Okay. Wait, one at a time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maury? Mr. Castro?
What accounts for the lowered rating for the bond issues?
That's a good question. Madam President, Mr. Castro, what actually Moody's looks at is your ability, what accountants call the going concern, is does the entity have sufficient cash reserves in case of an emergency? That's what they look at. And if the entity does not have adequate funds in case of an emergency, then your bond rating takes a hit. And it's not just 1 year. They look at a trend. You remember the graph that we looked at previously that showed a substantial decrease in our cash balance for the past 4 years. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at that over the trend and seeing the declining cash balance.
And our cash balance went down by $5 million. Is that?
Yes, sir. It has gone down $5 million for the past couple of years, and previously it has it's gone down about $5 million for the past 3 years. $5 million a year for the past 3 years.
And how do you account for that loss, the big drop?
Well, it's a couple of things. But predominantly our budget is staffing. Our budget is 90% staffing, and I'm rounding, but our budget is actually in excess of 90% in cost of human assets.
So maybe we're spending too much on staffing?
Yes, sir.
Is there any area that like the high school, the elementary school?
As we spoke in Finance Committee earlier today, that as we analyze the pupil-teacher ratio, okay, and as we analyze the pupil-teacher ratio, the PTRs at the high school is actually less than the PTRs at the elementary school. That means that we have less students per teacher at the high school as compared to the elementary school. And I do not, Dr. Marufo may have some of those numbers on the top of her head. I did not grab those numbers prior to coming in.
And I will ask Dr. Marufo to present those numbers for our work session, okay? So that we have a better idea of how she gets those numbers.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Dr. Marufo, did you want to say something to that effect?
Oh, I was just going to mention the numbers, but I'd be happy to wait till the presentation.
Okay. Do you have another question, Mr.
Well,
Russell?
I'll save my place.
Okay. Mr.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about retirees. I mean, I'm sure we have a significant number of retirees, and that they're going to be replaced, by people who possibly will earn smaller salaries. Is that being factored in?
At this time, only if the retiree is known and they've gone ahead and resigned. At that point, what we will do is we will then fill that position with what is an average teacher salary. That's what we budget, is the average teacher salary. So if we have somebody that's that's highly compensated, that say that they're making $65,000 and they retire, then we will actually budget a $44,000 salary for that person, which is approximately our average teacher salary.
So we will generate some funds from that ultimately.
But we cannot count on that. We cannot count on that occurring, because if you start short shifting the budget, and that's a little bit, we took advantage to last year to balance the budget. We really had to take our vacancy savings and rebudget that money. And at that particular point in time, it looked like that the state of New Mexico was going to have a lot more money than what they wound up having. So as we took advantage of our vacancy savings within our current budget, that's part of the problem that we have in the current year.
Now, Madam President, will please the board, we'll bring you what we know about retirements at the work session so you can see live fire what we think we know. We'll also bring some trending from prior years so we can look at relativity to how that cooks out, and that'll give us some opportunity to do some calculation.
Right. I think it just does decrease the direness a little tiny bit anyway.
It does. That's correct.
It all helps.
Aside from the other things we've commented on, is there any hope for us having any solvency at all?
Madam President, Mrs. Hall, that's a good question. Yes, we can turn this. We can turn this. Are we going to be able to turn it and restore all of our cash balance in 1 year? No, we cannot. We cannot. But we can make the turn and start getting the trend back to where it needs to be and bring the district back into a prudent level of cash reserve.
Mrs. Hall, so when I came in 2007, the trajectory you're looking at today is almost identical to the trajectory I inherited. And I'll remind members of the board that we had a plan that took 3 years to nudge our cash balance above $10 million to get back into the thresholds we're at. That plan is going to serve us well as we look at our current condition. We've done it before.
Yes.
We can do it again, but there are some things we'll have to talk about to get to that place. And so I have certainly optimism, and we have past practice where we have done it.
And I'm glad we have you all to work on it. I don't want to have to.
Mr. Costa?
Yeah, I saw some of the material that compared to Albuquerque, the Albuquerque school district there, our admin is almost twice theirs, and I understand it's mostly in not the central office administration costs, but perhaps the high school principals and the admin in the high school.
Madam President, Mr. Castro, yes, we discussed this a little bit earlier today. So the last time that I analyzed APS's Albuquerque Public Schools budget, our superintendent's office, because that's easy extract, okay, because it's in a separate function within the budget. But as we look at the superintendent's office, our superintendent's office is a less of a percentage because it's less than 1% of the budget. Our superintendent's office is less than that of Albuquerque's as compared as a percentage of the total budget. But I do not know what you're looking at when you make those, when you say that. If you're looking at assistant principals, I think you're right, because APS, in a conversation that I had with my counterpart in Albuquerque, they do not place assistant principals in their buildings. They have to reach a much higher level before they get an assistant principal.
So, Madam President, Mr. Custer, just very short. So Albuquerque Public Schools, let me give an example, will not commit an assistant principal to an elementary school until the 801st student. We only have 2, I believe, elementary schools that exceed that. However, every elementary school in Las Cruces has an assistant principal and a principal. Now, we did it as a practice because of evaluation, supportive teachers, supportive discipline. But those are some of the things that you would see that are different. At the high schools, when we opened Centennial High School, we didn't draw down staffs nor administrative staffs as the kids left. So our staff per unit is up, and based on Albuquerque standards, we have one additional assistant principal on the average than they do at the high schools, to your point.
Are you finished?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well,
Yeah.
well, Mr. Dean, I think that we need to keep working, and we will see what we can do. It's hard to imagine that if they raise it $20 per student, that we're still short, and that's what I need to see why that happens.
And Madam President, and not to beleaguer the moment, but the problem is not necessarily in the state equalization guarantee, because it did go up $3 million. The problem is our cash balance declined by $5 million. That's the issue.
Madam President, I'm sorry.
And I was just going to say the goal would be to keep it stable.
Yes.
Not necessarily to move it up all at once, but to keep it stable.
To move it up all at once, I think is a knee-jerk reaction that is not going to benefit our students. However, we need to establish a plan that does increase it over a period of time. Our number one mission right now is still to educate students. It's not to build cash balance. I'm on page with that mission. So I understand that. But we need to change the trajectory. Otherwise, we're going to crash the plane.
Okay. Well, and you were going to say something, Mr. Rounds?
Madam President, I was just going to make an analogy for the public. So if you had your own personal checking account and savings account, and you paid your standard costs, like say your house payment, you only make enough to pay $500 of your $750 payment, and so you go to savings and borrow from yourself, that's in effect what we did. And we've run out of our savings account. And that practice we did because we thought that oil and gas in New Mexico would rise. Last July, we thought oil and gas would be at $100 a barrel. Today it closed at $46.17 a barrel. So in New Mexico, when you lose $1 on a barrel, you lose $8 million to the general fund. So we bet on oil and gas staying up, which meant the legislature would have distributed considerably more money than they are this year, something to the tune of over $100 a unit, and instead we're at $20. So I'll apologize to all of us that we bet that would happen, as did the state and everyone else, because we value keeping our teachers, raising pay for teachers, keeping our classes smaller. So we did that. We did it for 3 years running at the clip of $5 million a year. It wasn't replenished, and so now here we are. And so we have some work to do. I'm certain we're going to be able to do it. Mr. Dean and I have a lot of experience in this one. I've only got 32 years of it. He's got about 24. So okay. Between us, I think we can make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then... So we move on to Dr. Sanchez?
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As required by our grant, our Head Start grant, Ms. Linda Martinez, our Director of Federal Programs, is here to seek approval for adjustment of the SY 2014-15 Head Start budget. Thank you, Erlinda.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Las Cruces community. I'm here seeking approval to adjust the 14 Therefore, required by federal law, we have to move a lot of the equipment and the portables that belong to the Head Start program in Hatch back to Las Cruces. To do that, we need to adjust the budget to make sure we have funds to be able to pay for the moving cost. The adjustments, there is no impact to the instructional program. So I'm seeking approval for the amendment, the adjustment.
Does anyone have any questions before we take a vote?
Madam President, we recommend approval of this request.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, and a second?
We'll give the second to those,
Who's going to
Madam
be
Chair.
the
We'll
second?
do it.
Okay.
Take a
and
pick.
Whatever you want, Tina. And is there any discussion before we take a vote? Then we're ready. Do we need roll call? Or
Madam
just...
President, this, you only need action.
Okay, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And aye. So that passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. With that, as required by federal regulation, the feds and the state require the board to review the IDEA B, that's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act funding, and Donna Bush, our exemplary Assistant Director of Special Education, is here to do that.
Yes.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Rounds, and ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the proposed LCPS budget application for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, also known as IDEA B. The application is completed annually in order for school districts to be awarded federal funds for special education. These restrictive entitlement funds are supplement to the state and local funds in order to support the excess cost of educating students with disabilities. This does not include students who have exceptionality of gifted. The monies are available in two separate funds. One fund is for school-age students, kindergarten through age 21, and another fund for preschool students ages 3 to 5. Currently, the district serves 3,277 school-age students and 430 preschool students. The 2015-2016 IDEA B budget includes Fund 24106 will serve students in the amount of $5,119,851. Fund 24109 will serve preschool students in the amount of $133,352. The IDEA B application monies are budgeted for upholding federal guidance and rules, providing support and educational services for students with disabilities in the classroom, professional development, general supplies and materials to support students, teachers, related services, and other support staff. LCPS currently funds approximately 106 full-time equivalently staffed positions with IDEA B monies. In addition, the 2014-2015 IDEA B funding has reached and supported this school year 732 employees by providing substitutes, one-to-one educational assistance, stipends, and staff development. Parents were included in the development of the IDEA B application in addition to private school collaboration, which is required. The IDEA B application is due on April 27, 2015. With this, I conclude my request for approval, and I stand for questions.
Does anyone have questions? I have one question in regards to this, Mrs. Bush. You said that it doesn't serve gifted, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But we have a gifted preschool.
That's a Department of Instruction program.
So, Madam President, that is operational dollars rather than federal dollars.
Okay.
So the state formula awards funds for gifted. Federal IDEA B does not recognize gifted.
Okay. So we're using federal dollars for that preschool, not IDEA B money.
No, ma'am, we're using state operational dollars for that preschool gifted. These are the other preschool programs that are non-gifted, and then the federal part of our overall special ed for the rest of the range.
I just felt like, you say no to one and yes to the other, so that's why I'm trying to clarify.
Right.
I understand it's very...
Yes.
Our preschools that we serve with IDEA B monies are students who have been identified with disabilities.
Okay. All right. Okay. So then I will entertain a motion to approve this IDEA B application. Second. Okay. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Carrie Aguilera, our coordinator for secondary instruction, is here to report to you on the secondary English language arts and modern classical language adoption process as is required by your policy and regulation.
Madam President, school board members, Superintendent Rounds, good evening. I'm Carrie Aguilera, Coordinator of Secondary Instruction. I will be presenting the 9th through 12th ELA reading, core reading intervention, modern, classical, and native languages, process, adoption process, and results. Purpose: from the Las Cruces Public Schools Policy IJJ Textbook Selection and Adoption, the LCPS Board of Education is committed to providing textbooks and related instructional materials, both print and electronic, that support the district curriculum, and to establish responsibility and procedures for compliance with statutory and regulatory requirements. Adoption timeline. The adoption process occurred between October 2014 and March 2015. Following Las Cruces Public Schools Regulation IJJR, textbook selection, adoption, and use, the materials shall be selected in a quantity and quality deemed appropriate by the professional staff and consistent with the financial resources of the district. October-November 2014, a textbook instructional material review team, TMR, was designated, and the team developed a rubric that mirrored the New Mexico Public Education Department approved, New Mexico Public Education Department adoption review rubric, and evaluated all New Mexico PED approved materials under consideration. The material review team selected 2 or 3 choices that included electronic version availability for further review by the instructional staff in all high schools. November-December 2014, a textbook instructional materials selection committee recommended by principals utilized the material review team's developed rubric to evaluate materials. The material review team and selection committee included 15 members ranging from teachers, department heads, instructional specialists, and administration position. The committee members attended presentations by the publishers. January of 2015, the textbook selection committee members presented the information to the instructional staff at all of the high schools. A uniform presentation was given across the district. During the month that the textbooks were available for review on each campus, the principal notified parents of the adoption and invited parents and community to view and comment on the materials under consideration. Materials were available for 2 months to ensure ample time for review. Parent community member input forms were available to fill out and submit to the selection committee campus representative. LCPS advertised the District Advisory Council, the DAC meeting, and the 9th through 12th textbook adoption was on the agenda. A presentation and informational session was held for parents in the community. Time was allowed for questions and answers about the adoption process. Parents, community members were informed that each high school campus held a full set of all materials under consideration, and then that they were welcome to view and comment on the materials. January, February 2015. Using the rubric developed by the material review team, instructors submitted their completed rubrics to campus instructional specialists. School sites submitted choices to the instruction department for tabulation. March and April 2015, district-wide compiled and tabulated the results. Recommendations presented to the Board of Education for review, and recommendations presented to the superintendent for approval. April, May of 2015, schools are advised of the adoption. Instruction department will review orders to ensure sufficient textbooks are ordered. The adoption process, the selection or textbook selection, adoption and use policy and regulation process was followed. An adoption process documentation is available. Detailed timeline, committee invitations, meeting agendas, material review, developed rubric, publisher presentation schedule, committee sign-in sheets, parent community awareness, textbook review choices, district-wide school participation. The results and recommended adoption are as follows, and samples are available. For English, the Houghton Mifflin Harcourt ELA 9th through 12th core literature, American literature and British literature textbooks, the Bedford Freeman and Worth AP literature and AP language. Core reading intervention, Scholastic Read 180 materials. Spanish, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, German, EMC Publishing, Deutsch Actual. French, EMC Publishing, Tebranche. The only area of adoption still in review is the English language learner area of adoption. ELL instructors from across the district requested to further review the books and materials for newcomers and recent arrivals who speak little or no English. A discussion meeting was held, and further ELL, ESL sample materials have been ordered for each high school. The materials are currently in review. I stand for questions.
Does any of the board members have any questions? We're going to go ahead and page through them and see.
Can I read this first before I?
Oh, yes.
Are you done now, Mr. Frank? Good job.
Mr. Castro?
Yeah, can you give me examples of some of the recommendations that this committee did from some of the, important
We do have documentation.
Recommendations they made?
We do have documentation. For example, the ELA 9th through 12th. It starts off with a process from the New Mexico Pet Approved List, which is about this long, and it is narrowed down to 2 or 3 choices. For the ELA 9th through 12th, we had Pearson, we had Houghton Mifflin, and one more, and it slips my mind right now. But I do have a list of the whole choices, all of the choices that were reviewed, if you would care to see that.
And the language are all that series right there. I think we have French, right?
Correct. I brought a couple sections. I brought the 2nd and 3rd level, but of course the 1st and 4th level.
Okay.
It's the whole series.
All right. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, we discussed last time the Head Start meal report. That is a report that's included in your packet, and we stand for any questions that you may have on that meal report.
And I don't think we have any questions, as is usually the case, so thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. That concludes the instruction section.
Mr. Kinnon.
Now, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Rounds, coming to the podium now to explain the lunch increase is the esteemed Director of Food Services, Ms. Nancy Cathy.
Thanks, Dane. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Rounds. I'm here to request your approval of an increase in lunch prices for next school year. We'll be changing the elementary from $1.70 to $1.75, middle school from $1.85 to $2, and high school from $2 to $2.10. The reason for this request is that under the Healthy, Hungry, Free Act of, did I say all that right, of 2010, one of the issues we have to look at each year is moving our paid prices closer and closer to being the equivalent of what the government gives us for a free meal.
So currently, the goal that we're aiming at, which does change every year, is to average $2.96, which obviously this doesn't even get us there. But they have a formula, so each year they are asking us to increase about 4% as we work towards that. So we've been doing it over the last, I think the 5th year that we've asked for an increase. And so this is the first year we've asked for an increase on all 3 grade levels at the same time. Before I was able to do it by doing either elementary or middle and high. But as
Anyone have any questions about the price increase of student lunches?
Yeah, I have one.
Mr. Castro?
Yeah, how does this affect the poor children? Do they get free lunches or?
Yeah, the kids who are free are still free. And the kids who qualify for reduced meals, their price is not changing.
Okay.
So it stays at 40 cents. The only kids that are impacted by this are the full paying kids.
Okay, all right.
Okay, and if that's it, then I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, in your packet you've got the construction project, and if you project report. If you've got any questions, we do have, and I want to thank Dr. Sanchez for setting the bar so high. Our esteemed director of construction is in the room to answer any questions you might have. Ms. Gloria Martinez.
And Madam President, on your next board meeting, you'll have what's called the full report that we do quarterly, which will be itemized by project and give you some pictorial representations of those, the largest of which, of course, is the Las Cruces High School build-out that's happening.
Do we have any questions for Ms. Martinez? Okay.
How's
I'm sorry.
the high school, Las Cruces High moving along?
Well, Ms. Martinez?
Gloria?
I'll tell you, it's moving along great. Save Gloria a trip.
Okay.
Fine.
She's esteemed, but, let her sit back there. And you've heard me say this before. I've been involved with a lot of school construction projects, and all of us that are involved with this one's going along, knock on wood, as smooth as any project I've ever been associated with. It's on time. Again, knock on wood.
And I noticed that the students are now parking on the east side, and what's going on the corner there?
The corner that you see on right as you go down El Paseo,
yes.
We're building a field there, and it's a band practice field, artificial turf. And so when you drive up, you'll see where you used to see a parking lot, you'll see a nice, beautiful turf.
A nice, giant piece of plastic, right?
Rubberized plastic.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Cannon. And I think we're on to the first reading, which we have Dr. Greer here for the first reading of policy GICL, threat of violence by students. And is this a new policy, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Well, good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Rounds. Happy to be here to present this new policy on its first reading. The purpose of this policy is to establish processes related to threats of violence by students on school grounds and to maintain the safety of all students and staff. The purpose of this policy is ultimately to establish a clear protocol for all of our administrators to use when we have students who make threats of suicide and threats of homicide. The position that's expressed in this policy begins on position A. In case of threats that may constitute a violation of law, the school principal or designee shall notify law enforcement authorities. Position B. Threats of violence by students towards other students, school staff members, or school facilities are prohibited and may result in suspension or expulsion in accordance with current policies, regardless of whether the student is currently or was previously engaged in such conduct. Position C. Threat of violence by a student against him or herself shall be reported immediately to the building principal or designee to seek immediate appropriate interventions. Position D. When a student has made a credible threat of suicide or homicide towards another student or students, the principal or designee shall inform the parents of the student making the threat and the parents of the students identified as targets of the threats as soon as possible. Position E, all employees and students are required to report evidence of threats of suicide and or violence to their building principal or designee. Any reports that are regarded as insufficiently credible to warrant investigation shall be documented stating all reasons and the basis for such conclusion. And finally, position F, the policy is enforced in tandem with other policies we currently have in place regarding student discipline, gang and gang-like activities, hazing, bullying, cyberbullying, intimidation, hostile offensive conduct, sexual harassment of students, and student harassment based on protected characteristics. Now, I've been working on this policy with Dr. Sanchez for some time, and I would say that I work with our principals on a regular basis on this, as well as Todd Gregory. I don't know if he's still here. He was here earlier. We have, unfortunately, this is a common occurrence where we have students who make threats to harm others and to harm themselves, and we very much are in need of a standardized protocol to help our administrators act appropriately and consistently. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I would like to see the
It's right here.
I had a question.
Okay.
The purpose of this policy is to establish process-related threats to violence by students on school grounds. My question was, aren't we responsible for the students coming and going from school?
That's correct.
Well, I don't, it says only on school grounds, and also aren't we responsible for events that we have? That's not reflected in the purpose. So I would ask you to put that in there so they understand it's not just, we're not just talking about the schools, we're talking about our responsibilities of the children coming and going and the other events that we sponsor, and we're responsible for them when they go off to an event. That's a part of the state. That just needs to be in part of the purpose area.
Right. A great suggestion.
So, Mr. Davis, perhaps something like after by students on school grounds, comma, or areas of school responsibility, comma, might be an all-encompassing statement. We'll work on some verbiage and run it past the board if that's okay.
I really don't care how you say it.
Just be sure it's included. Yes, sir.
I'm not an English major, so.
Absolutely.
Mr. Rounds, would it be also extracurricular events?
And Madam Chair, yes, it would, and that's where areas of school responsibility might be encompassing enough. My worry would be in policy is to be too iterative over time, so that's kind of a general sweep. We'll look at other language that you have in policy that might give us some idea of other verbiage. It's a great suggestion, and as always on first reading, we need to look at these things.
Okay, Mr. Castro?
Yeah, I was wondering what are the major changes, or what's different from the old policy, the same one? What is it that changed?
So it's a new policy, and it expands upon our student rights and responsibilities and discipline policies to make a very specific recommendation on protocol to investigate threats of suicide or homicide made by students.
Madam President, in the past we weren't specific to that, and there's some litigations that are out there that cause us to believe this is a wise policy addition to go directly to those events.
Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, if I may also mention, Mr. Rounds actually reviewed this policy with all of our principals today at the administrators meeting and asked them to distribute it to our counselors, social workers, to review the language to see if they might have any suggestions for improvement, which we'll report on during second reading.
Okay. If no one has any other questions or comments, then we'll move on.
I have one more quick comment. I congratulate you guys for being on top of this thing, and it's so critically important now with what's happening all around the country. It certainly addresses that big concern. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Castro.
Dr. Bray. Now we're going to move on to the third reading and approval of policy FEE, school site selection. Now, we had been asked, Councilman Gil Sorg was going to come and talk about this, but he had meetings all day long, and so he has excused himself from being here. He has read it and he approves. And there was a conversation about the next step, which would be an MOU with the city, and so that's why we're going ahead with this. This is our piece for the district, and we're moving on to that MOU with the city. So I will entertain a motion.
Can I say something?
Oh, well, let's do the motion.
Okay.
A motion to approve policy FEE, school site selection.
So moved.
And a second. Okay, now discussion.
I just had one suggestion, proposal, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're selecting a site around the city, there's a lot of stakeholders and a lot of people interested in having a piece of the action, especially developers. And if I was a developer, certainly I want a school built close to where my property is, my holdings are, and it would certainly elevate the value. What I'm proposing is that when we select a committee, advisory committee, that we select a committee that signs some kind of statement about conflict of interest. And I have a suggestion, statement with me if you care to see it.
Okay, so shall we hold?
Madam President, let me suggest that perhaps Mr. Castro could provide me with the statement, and I think it's a wise notion, and I believe as we move forward on the MOU part, I think that may be the right place for us to incorporate some of those kinds of items, and we'll bring it back certainly to the board for your review, and as we move through time. I think as we get with the city, because they're the other partner in most cases, the county also, and MPO, but usually the city, I think they may have some ideas along a similar line that we might want to meld together in the MOU. So I appreciate the point, and if I could just, I'd be happy to receive it today or whenever it's convenient, Mr. Castro, and then move ahead if that would.
Mr. Castro, do you agree that the MOU might be a good place to put that conflict of interest?
As long as it goes in there, I'd be very happy.
Okay.
Satisfied.
I think it's a good point. Thank you so much.
Just wants to preclude.
Yes. It's a good idea. I think it's a very wise. We need to be vigilant. Any other comments? Are we ready to take a vote? And were you going to say something, Ms. Calvar?
No, I was just in case it came up for anything else.
Okay. Then all in favor of FEE school site selection, please say aye or nay.
Aye.
And I say aye, so we approve this policy and ready to move on to the next step of the city. We are now on board member reports. Who would like to start today? Mr. Davis, you're in the clear. Mr. Castro? Any comments? Ms. Hall?
Other than being in schools for student teachers, I have been here.
Okay. We've been busy.
We have.
And Mr. Frank?
Well, I feel compelled to talk about the letter that we got, that we received yesterday from Secretary Scandera.
Do you want to?
This is a letter that shot down our resolution from, I forget, March 17th, I believe. I'm just frustrated and angry, but I'm not angry at Secretary Scandera. I mean, I mean, I kind of understand where she's coming from. I mean, she's acting from a position of ignorance and power, and she just doesn't seem wise enough to listen to people like our superintendent, who has the most experience of any superintendent in the state, or listen to the educators that are on this school board. So I'm not angry and frustrated at her. I understand she doesn't have experience. She's never been in a classroom. I'm angry and frustrated at myself because I don't know what we can do about this. I know that, the issue of rescinding that resolution is going to come up, and I at this time, I can't see how I can support rescinding it. I mean, she needs to read our newspaper and read some of the comments that some of the people have written, if I can find them. I mean, one teacher wrote in reaction to the article that was in the Sun News, "My hope is that other school districts will follow this board's pragmatic decision. I received 0 points for my attendance. The in quotes, adult interests, unquote, I put ahead of what was, in quotes, right and best for my students were cancer and jury duty. Those are the only 2 reasons I missed school." I mean, Secretary Scandera thinks that this board is advocating that teachers take off every other Friday. I mean, she doesn't understand. That's not our position. So, I am agitated, and I'm still.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And I do want to say that, I've also visited schools. I visited Monte Vista Elementary. I visited their ELL classes. We talked about how they use PSYOP strategies. And I also sat in a 4th grade. I went into a 4th grade, and they were using the objective of determining attributes of quadrilaterals and to find them around the room. I like that so much. It's so much fun. Also, in the 4th grade PLC, they were analyzing writing samples. And the best thing that I saw is that the 3rd graders there had put together a recycling museum, and they used the student teacher was the one that had initiated that. And they have those pods in Monte Vista where you can, just fill it up with whatever. And it was very nicely done. It was like a museum. They did a wonderful job. Mr. Frank and I met with Maria Arteaga at Valley View. We wanted to see her new location. They're still adjusting to the location, and she is planning a board training for our new board members. We toured the facilities in the playground. On our way out, we saw Mr. Rincon and just stopped and chatted. We owe him a follow-up visit to go into the classrooms. I attended the Success Summit that is with the nonprofit Engage last Friday, and there were over 50 community members there. It was a very good meeting, and the focus was on the collaboration of the whole community. It was especially moving because there were so many students present, and the whole event took on a new air. Things overheard. Teachers are grieving that we don't have enough time to teach. Individual student focus. Student membership on the board. Roll back to 24 credits. All of these were comments that I heard in that meeting. So these are powerful moments that we get together with others. There were teachers there, and there were business leaders there, and it was a good meeting. My husband and I were both lucky to be judges at his alma mater, New Mexico Tech, in March. It was exhilarating and exhausting for us, and the students were absolutely amazing. I never knew who was from Las Cruces. You're not supposed to ask, and so I try to be quiet. I have an abstract that neither of us understand. I have it here. I actually can pass it around. It was an honor to be there and to be a part of the event. I also met some very interesting scientists that I worked with in collaboration on the judging. It was a lot of fun. I met with Dr. Marufo, and we talked about enrollment numbers and the process she will present to the board for our next session. The board's goal is to meet the students' needs to the best of our ability. Finally, we received the letter from Ms. Scandera. We have been talking about it amongst ourselves. And I got a telephone call from her today. I first emails and then telephone call. So I talked to her and Mr. Montaño about a resolution and the reporting of this year's absences. I spoke on behalf of our teachers, the stress and the struggle to not take time off. I have received over 65 thank yous in that regard, in that motion of our resolution. And now we're forced to back away. Most teachers care deeply about their evaluation, and they do not want it to be lower than an effective. I've talked to teachers that say, I don't want to take more than 3 days off because then I want to be exemplary. I want to be highly effective. They don't want to be mediocre. I asked how we can bring the two sides together. They both reassured me that even if a teacher takes all of his or her days off, it is only worth 20 points. Now that's hoping that everything else comes in super high. I think that's how it works. They said that there were many examples here in Las Cruces of teachers that taking all their days and still coming in with a high ranking. The impact, according to them, this is their exact quote, the impact is minimal on the overall evaluation. So she left it up to us to communicate, to do what you need to do. Now, let's see how this works for us. Will it work for us? Let us know. That's all we can do right now. This is their view, and it is their policy. The next best thing that we can do is to stop it from becoming law. That's the only other thing I can think that we can do at this point. We have no choice but to follow as directed, but I did tell her how we were trying to support our teachers without condoning higher absenteeism, because they are saying that we want teachers to take every other Friday off. Now, who has said that? None of us. It was not what we said. It was a worthy fight, and we hope that empathy is what is learned on the other side, because that's what's missing right now. And we're sorry.
So, Madam President, may I be explicit about that, because this is incredibly important. I know it's been I know it's been at the position of the board, and I think it was a heartfelt, thoughtful process you went through with the resolution and the interim work as I ran up and down to Santa Fe. What I will announce to you is, as Madam President indicated, we will be filing the absentee report tomorrow based upon the original agreed upon plan, which is in fact backing away from the resolution of the board. But as Madam President indicated, not only did the board receive notice, I received notice also, and in both letters it talked about removal of boards or superintendents who do not comply with the statutory and regulatory requirements. And so I just need to announce that that is what will be filed tomorrow, and it will be what will be on the record for teacher evaluation. I share Mrs. Flores' interest in assuring that we're careful and equitable as we look at absences. What I heard as an example, Mr. Frank, in the case of cancer and things like that, there are provisions for us to evaluate that, and Dr. Marufo and I, in fact, today spent some time working on our protocol as we clear absences, is the term I'll use, for extenuating circumstances. And among those could be cancer treatments and things like that, FMLA, which is the leave category, the Family Medical Leave Act, that most of that clusters in, but not always. And so we will, with our principals, be reviewing individuals who've had significant absences to determine the basis for that. And my pledge to you, Madam President, members of the board, is to use all the power in my office to review those on a case-by-case basis and make appropriate adjustments where that's at. But at the end of the day, it is 0 through 12 absences that we'll be using, and using the original rubric that is in our 3-year plan. And I just want to be explicit about that.
And Mr. Rounds, if you could, just for us, for in-house, when the teachers get their evaluation scores, let's put the 2 numbers on their evaluation so that then you can tell us how it works out. Is it fair? Is it equitable? And let us know then how you came out.
So, Madam President, what we will do is we will work diligently at how we might maneuver that. I have an idea in mind. We had done some data work, as the board knows, as we intended to follow your resolution. And so the issue is how we attach that to the teacher evaluation document. I don't believe we'll be able to do that electronically through the state system. However, we'll have to look at an internal process to notify teachers in their individual case, and we'll work on, as an example, an errata notification that shows you what that effect would be. We'll inform the board about process, and we'll try to honor your request, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I do have to give credit to Ms. Scandera. She called me. She didn't have to do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So her credit is due. So we have a calendar of events. Be sure and look over them and let us know if you are not going to be present for any of the major upcoming events. We have a very, very busy month coming up.
Yes, we do.
So, and if there is nothing further, then I entertain a motion to close the meeting. And all in favor?
Aye.
So closed.
Just for your information.